Welcome back to LawCall. Phone lines are open, 850-392-1544. And over the break, we had an email question come in from Jess. My cousin was killed when his motorcycle hit an SUV. It's been suggested that my cousin was speeding, but the driver definitely turned in front of him. If they can somehow prove that my cousin was over the speed limit, does that mean his family has no claim against the driver? Very good question, Jess. Kelly, what do you think about that?
Very good question. So this is exactly the kind of case that you really do need to reach out to a lawyer immediately, if not sooner, because we can get information like downloads from the vehicles, either the car that he hit and or his motorcycle, these sorts of things, and we can actually show with the downloads from the boxes, basically, the black boxes, as you would call them in an airplane crash, but and these sorts of things, we can get that information so we can show exactly who was doing what at exactly what time and when the impact happened and all that sort of thing. It's also important that you talk to a lawyer because we are a comparative fault state and the law has changed recently, and so if you're over 50% at fault, you can be, it's kind of problematic for you. So it's very important that you do talk to a lawyer immediately, if not sooner, and get in touch.
Because you're not, I mean, the speed limit is one factor.
Right.
A jury is ultimately asked to weigh in the balance
Right.
the respective faults of each of the parties. And just going over the speed limit does not preclude you from recovery because that may or may not be what really caused the accident. If you were going the speed limit, it may not have made a difference. So a lot of times we have to get engineers involved to do speed analysis and, would this have made a difference? So it's very, very critical that you get that information. You want to get evidence preserved as soon as possible. It's not,
100%.
It's been, especially in today's age, it's not unusual to have video camera footage that you can obtain, whether it be from someone's Ring camera.
It could be from a pack-a-sack.
It can be from I've had it as crazy as from a drink machine that had a camera on it, from banks to convenience stores, you name it. And those can be very telling on whether, how that plays out. And, pictures is worth 1,000 words. We can all argue about it, but if you can see what actually happened, there can be a lot of weight to that. So you want to,
as you know, Ted, too, those cycle over every 30 days. They go over very quickly.
I mean, some of them are as quickly as 72 hours,
Right.
depending on the capacity of the system, the hard drives that they have. So it's important that you get that information very, very quickly. And it sounds like this is a very, very serious case.
And very
so
tragic.
you want to make sure that they have that information so they can do whatever they can for the beneficiaries to make sure and find whatever recovery they can.
So sorry about your cousin.
And in those situations too, Kelly, it's very important. One of the things that we have in Florida, unlike we had the caller from Houston County earlier, in Alabama there are mandatory bodily injury limits that you have to carry on your car. Our Florida legislature has made the decision that Florida residents are not required to carry any coverage to protect someone if they hurt them. So that makes it critical that you protect yourself.
Get uninsured motorist or underinsured
right.
motorist.
And tell us briefly what uninsured motorist is, Kelly.
So uninsured motorist protection is a coverage that you buy for yourself that protects you and your loved ones if you are injured by someone who is under or uninsured. And we have, I think it's like the second highest rate of uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist in the country. It's very high up there. If it's not second, it's third. I mean, it's really high up there. So it's super important that you do protect yourself, because when you buy that insurance, that's coverage that will take care of you. So if somebody hits you who, like Ted said, doesn't carry bodily injury insurance because you're not required to do so in Florida, you're only required to have $10,000 in personal injury protection and $10,000 in property damage. But if you have underinsured or uninsured motorists, it takes care of you. So it's a secondary insurance beyond somebody else that has bodily injury or whatever. You can actually collect against that as well. So it's very wonderful.
And it's important if you get in a situation where the damages are going to exceed any coverage that's out there with the other party, that you look at all the possible avenues of uninsured motorist coverage. So for example, not just your own personal policy, but if you're a passenger in the car with someone that is hit, possibly you can qualify under the driver's policy. If you live with blood relatives or your spouse has a separate policy, you have to look at those, because very typically Policies have coverage that extend to resident relatives, people that live in your house that are related by blood or marriage. If they have a policy that has the coverage, it could apply to you. So it's important that you look at all possible options, especially when you're talking about a case that has damages in excess of those limits. And it's not unusual that we run into a situation where we have someone that does not have health insurance.
Right.
And so you're looking at this accident, any coverages that we can find is the only, quote, health insurance that they're going to have to help them. So it's important that you leave no stone uncovered. And you know, a lot of people come into the office and they tell me they have full coverage.
It's not the case.
And you know, the quote legal definition of full coverage is legal coverage, which is what you said, the 10,000 in
10.
property damage,
Right.
and 10 in PIP no fault. And that just the name does not mean what it sounds like it means. It's the same thing where you know, a lot of people tell me they think we're a no fault state, which we are. But that doesn't mean what it sounds like it means. Yes, we all have to carry the PIP, personal injury protection, that will pay up to $10,000 of your medical expenses, regardless of fault, in any accident. So that's important because that will pay as you go. The liability coverage for the person that causes the accident will only pay out once when you settle the case, or either you get a judgment against them and go and collect it. So you got to get that treatment. That PIP helps with that, but that doesn't mean you don't have that fault-based claim against whomever caused the accident. So, and I've even seen, you know, officers that kind of suggest that to people. It's a no-fault state. I don't have to worry about who's responsible for the accident. But that could not be further from the truth.
Could not be further.
So make sure you look at all possible options whenever you have an accident like that. Another issue is that, you know, Kelly mentioned we now have we've always been a state that has comparative fault, but due to recent tort reform, we now have a cutoff on that comparative fault statute that says, before, even if you were only as low as, if the at-fault party was only 1% liable, you could still recover 1% of your damages. We now have a statute that precludes you from recovery if they are able to establish that you are more than 50% responsible for the accident. And that can become a very convoluted analysis, and depending on how many people are involved in the accident, to try to figure out that threshold. So it's important, like you said, that you have someone helping you from the get-go so that that case stays on the right path and you're able to establish the facts in order to properly pursue that claim. Another change in that tort reform that we did not have in the past is that now claims have to be brought within 2 years of the accident, where before you had 4 years within which to either resolve or bring your claim. So it's now more important than ever to get those claims looked at in a timely fashion, because it's not unusual, Kelly. We see it every day that people have not resolved their claims within 2 years.
Every day. It's actually for some of them, it's actually kind of rare. I mean,
right. Depending on the nature of your injuries.
The more money that is at stake in terms of recovery, the longer the claims typically take.
Right.
Unless it's a death claim and something like that.
And nobody wants to go straight to surgery.
No.
They're going to do everything they can to avoid it, and sometimes that takes time. So make sure and look at all your options and make sure you are educated on whatever decision you make.